The land around St. Lo was a wound that refused to close. Charred trees rose like black spears against a pale sky. Sergeant James Miller walked among them, the new stripes on his sleeve still stiff and unfamiliar. Promotion meant survival, but it also meant responsibility. The kind that could crush a man faster than enemy fire. He moved through the mud-streaked road, stepping over broken helmets and burnt rations. The convoy ahead rumbled toward the south, toward Avranches, where the brass promised a breakout. Operation Cobra, a name meant to sound decisive. To Miller, it sounded like something waiting in the grass. Diary, July 23, 1944. I was a private on Omaha. Now they call me sergeant. The word tastes wrong. Maybe because the men I'd follow into hell aren't here to see it. The morning of July 24th began like a storm brewing from the earth itself. The sky filled with bombers, a thunder that shook the soil. Men cheered at first, thinking it would be clean, quick, until the wind betrayed them. Bombs fell short. The ground convulsed as craters opened around Miller's squad. Men screamed. Friend and foe disappeared beneath clouds of dirt and shrapnel. Miller hit the ground, his helmet ringing as concussive waves tore through the air. When it ended, he tasted blood and cordite. He dragged 2 survivors from a ditch, their uniforms torn to ribbons. Above, the smoke twisted into black columns, blotting out the sun. That night, Miller wrote by the light of a dying flare. Friendly fire, that phrase doesn't fit. Nothing friendly in what we saw today. They moved again at dawn. The bombers had shredded everything. Roads, fences, even the hedgerows that once protected the enemy. The landscape was a moonscape of smoke and ruin. Every step crunched over glass and bone. German snipers still lingered in the ruins, ghosts among the craters. Miller led point, rifle ready. His new men, replacements from the 83rd, followed in silence, wide-eyed, clutching their weapons too tight. A shot cracked from the right. The man behind Miller dropped instantly. No scream, just collapse. Miller ducked, scanning the tree line. He fired twice, saw nothing, moved anyway. War, he realized, was less about courage than about motion. Stop moving and you died. By afternoon, the company regrouped behind a ridge. Captain Reynolds barked orders. Push through, no delay. Command wanted speed. The Germans were breaking. But the men were exhausted, deafened, trembling from the bombardment. Miller looked at the faces around him. Mud-streaked, hollow, too young to be this old. He repeated the captain's orders, voice steady though his stomach turned. As they advanced through the shattered fields, he caught himself whispering Davis's name. It was habit, the echo of a friendship now buried in the hedgerows. Diary, July 25th. I give orders now. Strange, how the words sound just like his. Maybe I'm keeping him alive that way. The breakout began in earnest. Tank engines roared, their treads grinding through the soft earth. Sherman after Sherman rolled past, guns blazing at anything that moved. Infantry followed in waves, Miller's squad among them, moving through a haze of smoke and dust. Machine gun nests cracked from the far hedgerows, but artillery answered faster. The German line began to crumble. In the noise, Miller felt something shift. Not hope exactly, but momentum. A private named Ross shouted, "They're running, Sarge!" Miller didn't answer. He'd seen men run before, only to turn and fight from another hill. Still, when they reached the edge of the valley and saw enemy trucks burning, he allowed himself a single breath of relief. The war was moving again, and so were they. The road south was lined with wreckage. Burned half-tracks, shattered carts, and the remains of both armies mixed together. The smell of oil and death hung heavy. Then came the civilians. They stepped from cellars and barns, thin and gray as smoke. Miller watched a mother carrying a child whose face was covered in soot. She smiled weakly at him, a ghost of gratitude that hurt more than the gunfire. He knelt, handed her a ration tin. She said something in French he couldn't understand. It didn't matter. He understood the tone. Exhaustion that had forgotten fear. The column moved on. Behind them, the woman faded back into the ruins like a shadow retreating from light. That night, the hills erupted again. Artillery thunder rolled endlessly, red lightning flashing against the horizon. Miller's squad huddled in the ruins of a barn. Some cleaned their weapons, others stared into nothing. He took out his notebook. The pages were damp, edges frayed. He wrote, "They say this is victory. I see craters. I see faces that don't blink anymore. Maybe victory is just a word you use to keep moving." The barn trembled as shells fell somewhere beyond the fields. A private began to pray under his breath. Miller listened, not out of faith, but because silence felt worse. At dawn, they reached the ridge overlooking Avranches. The city burned beneath them, towers of smoke spiraling into the bright sky. The Germans were retreating, scattering toward Brittany. For the first time in weeks, there was open country ahead. Captain Reynolds raised his binoculars. "We've broken through," he said quietly, as if afraid to wake something sleeping. Miller watched the smoke curl and vanish. "We break through," he thought, "and then we bleed again." Still, he knew the truth. This was a turning point. The road to Paris began here, in fire and ash. They moved down into the city's ruins. Among the rubble, they found German bodies mixed with civilians. A shop front still smoldered, a doll's head lying in the dust. Miller stepped carefully, boots crunching on glass. One of his men muttered, "They said it would be clean after Cobra." Miller said nothing. War had no clean edges. He looked at the surviving townsfolk, eyes sunken, clothes torn. They offered bread, wine, whatever remained. Gratitude in the ruins. He accepted with a nod, unsure how to bear it. He wrote later, "They call us liberators. I don't feel like one. We free towns but leave pieces of ourselves in every street." July 31st, 1944. The Americans had done what no one thought possible. Broken through the German line in Normandy. The countryside opened at last, rolling hills, roads stretching toward the heart of France. Miller stood beside his jeep, map in hand. His next orders lay farther south, but for a moment, he allowed himself to breathe. The air smelled of earth and smoke, but beneath it, faintly, he caught something new. Grass. Summer. Life. He touched the diary in his pocket, feeling the worn edges. "We broke out," he whispered. "Now we have to find what's left of ourselves." The engine started. Dust rose in pale spirals. The convoy rolled south, toward Brittany, and the next chapter of a war that refused to end.